It begins with a number that doesn't make sense in the country we think we know. More than 33,000 American veterans are homeless right now. Not over the course of a year. Not a long-term estimate. That's on any given night. Many of them sleep on sidewalks just a few miles from military bases where they once trained. Some pitch tents behind gas stations, others park their cars at the edge of grocery store lots and try to sleep sitting up. A few manage to rotate through shelters if there's room. Most just make it work, every single night, in a country that promised them they would be taken care of. We like to imagine we take care of our veterans. We name stadiums after them. We give them priority boarding on flights. We stand and clap when the color guard walks by during the 4th of July parade. And yet, thousands of them are out there, folding their uniforms into garbage bags and waiting for the morning to come. It's a contradiction we don't like to face. But it's real. It's right there, in the corners of our cities and the gaps between our systems. Now picture this. It's Saturday morning, somewhere in Ohio. Main Street is blocked off. A brass band starts up, marching in time. Flags wave. Kids eat ice cream too early in the day. People stand for the national anthem. You've seen this before. It's good. It feels American. But 4 blocks down, just past the overgrown lot and the edge of the industrial park, a row of tents shakes in the wind. A hand-painted cardboard sign is tied to a chain-link fence. The letters are clear. I serve too. No exclamation point, no demands, just a reminder. That's the America we live in now. Pride on one street, pain on the next. We've learned how to look at both and pretend they aren't connected. Today, we stop pretending. Let me introduce you to someone. We'll call him Ray. He's not a symbol. He's a person. He's in his late 50s, short gray stubble, lean frame, eyes that dart left and right before he speaks. The kind of guy who knows which coffee shops don't mind you sitting for hours if you nurse one cup and keep your shoes clean. And Ray always keeps his shoes clean, even now. He served in the Army back in the 90s. Says he didn't do anything special. Just followed orders, stayed out of trouble, and got home in one piece. Worked security when he got out. Did warehouse shifts, drove delivery for a while, helped a cousin in construction. He was never rich, but he was steady until he wasn't. A bad ankle kept him off his feet longer than expected. The company let him go. Rent piled up. A friend needed help, so Ray let him crash for a few weeks. Then a fight. Then a notice on the door. Then the couch was gone, and then he just never got back in. If you ask Ray what happened, he doesn't blame anyone. He just shrugs. One thing led to another, he says. Next thing you know, I'm at the shelter, and they're out of beds. That's how it works for a lot of people, especially veterans. It's not one big mistake, it's a dozen small things. A medical bill, a missed paycheck, a car that breaks down, a VA appointment that takes too long. And suddenly, you're out. And once you're out, coming back is harder than people think. Ray sleeps behind a church most nights now. Keeps a routine. Folds his blanket the same way. Keeps his documents in a sandwich bag. Old ID, a dog-eared copy of his DD-214, a picture of his unit from back in the day. He checks his bag twice before moving locations. Knows which bus lines are safest. Which bathrooms stay open late. Where to charge his phone. How to stay warm without setting off alarms. This isn't survival the way movies show it. There's no drama, no battle scene. Just quiet, constant calculation. How to stay visible enough for help, but not so visible that you get moved along. How to be clean enough to walk into a job interview, but not expect too much from it. how to stay human when the world treats you like you failed. And that might be the worst part. The shame. Because for veterans like Ray, the shame doesn't come from what they've done. It comes from where they are now, from being saluted in uniform to being ignored in a sleeping bag, from hearing "thank you for your service" to watching people cross the street to avoid you. He doesn't talk much about what it felt like to serve. He talks about the price of batteries at the corner store. He talks about weather apps. He talks about which bus shelters leak. That's his world now. And here's the truth we don't want to say out loud. He did everything right. He served. He worked. He paid taxes. He didn't ask for more than he was owed. But when life hit hard, there was no hand waiting. Just more paperwork, more lines, more closed doors. And yet, Ray shows up. Every morning, boots laced, eyes open, still trying. So the question is, if Ray isn't broken, if the system is, then how do we fix it? Because Ray's not the only one. And tomorrow, someone else will be next. If you ask the Department of Veterans Affairs, they'll tell you they're working on it. And they are, at least on paper. Billions of dollars are allocated every year toward veteran services, including housing assistance. There are vouchers, grants, outreach programs, and mental health resources. Dozens of acronyms: HUD-VASH, SSVF, GPD. Each one a lifeline, in theory. Each one built to catch people before they fall too far. But here's what veterans like Ray actually experience: confusion, long waits, and forms that seem to loop back on themselves. He remembers the first time he went to the VA office. It was 4 weeks after he lost his apartment. He'd spent a few nights in his car, then another in a shelter that locked the doors at 6 p.m. sharp. A man there told him to go early to the VA to get in line before the rush. Ray showed up at 6:45 a.m. The doors opened at 8. By 8:05, there were 40 people behind him. By 10:30, he was told he needed a referral from a clinic he hadn't been to in years. And that clinic? It didn't take walk-ins. He spent the rest of the week trying to track down his old records, calling numbers that didn't answer, showing up places where the receptionist just shook her head. It wasn't until a month later that he got assigned a caseworker. She was kind, overworked. She had 37 veterans on her list that week. She handed him a form. He asked if she could help fill it out. She said, "I can help you next Tuesday." That's the gap. Not the lack of programs, the lack of people to guide you through them. And for veterans who are already dealing with mental health issues, PTSD, depression, anxiety, that gap can feel like a wall. You need help to ask for help. And if no one's there in that moment, you might not try again. Ray did. But he almost didn't. He says there was a week in his second month on the street when he stopped going to appointments. He stopped checking in. He just drifted. Slept behind the train station, ate from a church pantry, walked for hours. Not toward anything, just away from everything. He's not proud of it, but he's honest. Some days, he says, you get tired of hearing no with a smile. He's not the only one who's been through that spiral. There's Angela, a Navy vet in her 40s, who left an abusive relationship and found herself living in her car with her teenage son. She says the hardest part wasn't the cold, it was the judgment. You feel it when people look at you like you must have done something wrong, like you wasted something. There's Mike, a Marine who did 3 tours and now lives in a tent by a river in California. He's been sober for 2 years, goes to the VA for therapy. But he still can't get housing because he has an old eviction on his record from 2016. He calls every month to check the waiting list. Still pending, they say. These aren't rare stories. They're common. And the more you look into it, the more you realize the system is built for people who already know how to navigate systems. People with internet access, a charged phone, a permanent mailing address, transportation, ID that hasn't expired, mental clarity, a willingness to fill out 20 pages of paperwork just to maybe get into a program with a 6-month waiting list. In other words, the people who don't need urgent help. And yet, somehow, the people most at risk, those sleeping under tarps and in doorways, are expected to jump through hoops that would frustrate anyone with a mortgage and a working printer. This isn't just inefficient, it's inhumane. Because for people like Ray, time matters. Energy matters. That one bus ride downtown might be the last ride they can afford until next week. That missed phone call might mean losing their spot in line. That 5th unanswered voicemail might be the moment they give up. You can have the best program in the world, but if no one can access it, what good does it do? And this is where the conversation gets uncomfortable. Because the question isn't just, why are veterans homeless? The question is, what do we expect from them once they are? Do we expect them to be strong enough to carry both their service and their suffering? Do we expect them to prove every step of the way that they're worthy of help? Or do we trust that someone who once wore the uniform, who once took an oath to protect this country, should be given a clear, simple, human path back to stability? A path that doesn't require luck or a miracle. A path that starts with a person, not a form. Ray is still waiting. He checks in every week. His caseworker tries, but the process moves slow, too slow, especially when the nights are getting colder. He says he dreams about one thing over and over. A room with a door that locks. Nothing fancy. Just a small table, a chair, a place to hang his coat. Is that really too much to ask? Next time, we'll walk through one full day in Ray's shoes. His actual routine, his stops, the places he gets turned away, and the moments that make it almost worth it. Because when you really understand what a day on the street looks like, you'll understand why promises, no matter how well-meaning, aren't enough. The day begins early for Ray, earlier than most people wake up. He's usually on his feet by 4:30 a.m., not because he wants to be, but because sleeping outside means waking with the cold, with the noise, or with the quiet pressure of needing to move before anyone tells you to. There's no snooze button on cement, no safe place to lie in. He packs up everything he owns in the dark, rolls his blanket, checks that his ID is still tucked into the sandwich bag inside his backpack. Every item has its place. He double-checks the zipper, then slings the pack over his shoulder and starts walking. No destination yet, just forward. The shelter opens sign-ups at 5:30 a.m., but the line forms earlier. The night before, Ray stayed behind a church 2 miles away. He needs to get there in time. The city has over 200 homeless veterans, but only 400 shelter beds. And many of those are already taken by long-timers. If you don't get on the list by 6 a.m., you're out for the night. On his way, he passes through a neighborhood just waking up. Lights flicker on in upper-story windows. Sprinklers hiss to life. A man in gym shorts jogs past him, earbuds in, focused, steady. Ray steps aside. He's done this before. He doesn't want to be seen as in the way. He arrives at the shelter line just after 5:15. There are 19 people ahead of him, mostly men. Some nod. A few are new, young, tense, wide-eyed. Ray knows the look. He had it once too. At 6:10, the staff come out. One clipboard, one pen, one voice calling names. The intake volunteer is firm but kind. Ray gets a wristband. No bed yet. Just a spot on the maybe list. He'll have to check back at 4 p.m. to see if a slot opens up. No guarantees. From there, Ray walks to the library. It's warm, quiet, and has outlets. The library opens at 9, but the bench out front is safe enough to sit for a while. He eats a granola bar, drinks from a bottle he refilled at the park yesterday. He checks his phone. It has 12% battery left. Still no response from the housing coordinator. Still no update on the VA wait list. Just a spam message and a missed call from an unknown number. He sighs. He'll go back to the clinic today anyway. By 10:30, he's at the downtown VA Health Center. He knows the nurse who checks people in. Her name is Monica, and she always says, "Welcome back," even if you've been there 5 times that week. It makes a difference. He's there to follow up on his mental health referral. PTSD, mostly. Insomnia, nightmares. He's been on a list for 4 weeks now, waiting for a call from behavioral services. Monica looks at the screen, frowns, and tells him they're still backlogged. "Try again Friday," she says. "I'll leave a note." It's noon now. He walks 10 blocks to a church that serves lunch on Wednesdays. Chicken and rice, banana, bottle of water, no lectures, just food. At his table, a man named Carl talks about a housing program that helped him for 2 months until the funding ran out. Another guy, Marcus, has a court date tomorrow. He says he was arrested for sleeping near a city hall doorway. Disorderly conduct, the citation said. Ray doesn't say much. He listens, eats, thanks the volunteers, leaves quietly. By 1:30, he's back on the street. Nowhere urgent to be. Just time to fill. He walks to the Workforce Resource Center, an office downtown that helps with resumes, job leads, and interview prep. Ray already knows most jobs are out of reach unless he finds stable housing first. He applies anyway. A janitorial night shift at a warehouse 2 hours from the shelter. No car, no transit options after midnight. Still, he nods and fills out the form. Better than nothing, he says. At 3:45 p.m., he returns to the shelter. The list is posted at 4. His name is not on it. He's not surprised. Just tired.
I understand your concern.
That night, he goes back to the church alley. It's not ideal, but it's familiar. He lays down the blanket, curls up with his bag, and pulls his jacket over his chest. It's going to be a cold night, but not the coldest he's seen. Before sleep, he looks at his phone one last time. No new messages. He closes his eyes, listens to the distant sound of traffic, a siren, a train. Tomorrow will be the same, but he'll still show up. Because here's the thing, no policy report ever includes persistence. Ray gets up every morning. He tries, again and again and again. You can measure a person's resilience by what they do when no one's watching. And every single day, without applause or headlines, Ray tries to reclaim a life that shouldn't have been taken from him in the first place. But how long can someone keep doing that without breaking? And what happens when one of those days, the bus is late, the phone dies, the clinic closes early, is just one barrier too many? That's where we're headed next. Let's talk about the breaking point. It's not always dramatic. It doesn't usually come with shouting or sirens or some grand collapse like you see in movies. Sometimes it's quiet. A moment so small you might miss it, unless you've lived it. For Ray, that moment came on a Thursday afternoon. He'd been waiting outside a housing assistance office for 3 hours, hoping to speak with someone about an emergency voucher. It was the 3rd time he'd come that week. Each time he was told to come back later. The staff wasn't unkind. They were just overwhelmed. Phones ringing, people lined up, paperwork everywhere. One of the interns even gave him a snack while he waited. But that Thursday, something shifted. They finally called him in. He walked up, explained everything again, his service record, the ankle injury, the months on the street, the contact he'd spoken to at the VA. The woman at the desk scanned her computer screen and frowned. "I don't see you in the system," she said. Ray leaned in. "I've been here 3 times. I was told to follow up today." She shook her head. "There's no application here. You'll need to start over. Fill out the intake forms again and bring proof of income, ID, and a letter of homelessness from a shelter. We can't move forward without those." Ray didn't say anything right away. He just nodded, slowly. Then he turned around, walked out, and sat down on the curb. And for the first time in a long time, he didn't move for hours. Not because he gave up, but because he couldn't figure out what to do next. "I just sat there," he later said. "Like I didn't exist anymore." He wasn't angry. He wasn't crying. He was just still. The kind of stillness that comes when your mind gets too tired to process another door closing. This is the reality for thousands of homeless veterans. Not always a lack of programs, but a maze of red tape and disconnected systems, where each office tells you to go to another one. Each number leads to another voicemail. Each form needs a copy of something you don't have. And even when you follow the rules, you might still get lost in the shuffle. And here's where the system breaks down. Not just structurally, but morally. We ask people like Ray to be resilient, to try harder, to stay clean, stay focused, stay polite, stay on track. But the track they're on? It was never built for someone trying to navigate it without a phone charger, a quiet space, a reliable mailing address, or a full night's sleep. Imagine trying to organize your finances, file applications, attend appointments, remember names, dates, and case numbers, all while hungry, tired, and constantly moving your belongings from one park bench to another. Imagine being told to wait 6 months for housing, but also being told you'll lose your spot if you don't answer your phone. Imagine knowing that missing one bus could reset your process by weeks. That's the kind of invisible burden we place on homeless veterans without ever naming it. We say the system didn't work, but really, it's working exactly as designed. It's just not designed for people like Ray, and that's where the spiral deepens. Because when the system fails you enough times, you begin to internalize it. You stop calling back. You stop asking questions. You start to believe that maybe you don't deserve more. That maybe this is just how it ends. That's when the damage becomes harder to measure. It's not just about housing, it's about identity, dignity, purpose. Ray served his country. Then he served his community. Then he served time on the sidewalk, trying to survive long enough to be seen again. And the longer he stays invisible, the harder it becomes to believe in any promise, even the one etched into every coin in his pocket. In God we trust. But here's the thing. There are moments, small, fleeting moments, that pull people back. The church volunteer who remembers your name. The nurse who takes 2 extra minutes to explain a form. The bus driver who waits an extra beat while you fumble for change. The stranger who says, "Hey man, I see you." These moments aren't policy. They're people. And sometimes they're enough to keep someone going one more day. Ray's not at his breaking point every day, but he remembers what it feels like to get there. And every time the system misses him, every time it makes him start over, it pushes him one step closer to that edge. The question is, what happens when that moment comes and no one's around? In the next section, we'll look at who is trying to catch people like Ray, and what it actually takes to get one veteran off the street for good. Not in theory, but in reality. Dollar by dollar, step by step, person by person. There are people trying to catch Ray before he falls again. You just don't always see them. They don't wear capes. They're not on posters. They don't have press conferences. They're stretched thin, working behind the scenes. Outreach workers, shelter volunteers, VA case managers, nonprofit teams, local clergy, and even other veterans still living on the streets who look out for their own. These are the people who form the thin human safety net between a bad day and total collapse. Take Greg, for example. He's an outreach coordinator for a small veteran nonprofit in the city. Not a big office, not a government badge, just a clipboard, a phone that won't hold a charge, and a car that's more duct tape than metal at this point. Every morning, Greg makes rounds through alleys, underpasses, park benches, places most people ignore or avoid. He knows who sleeps where. He checks in, cracks a joke, shares a muffin or a spare pair of socks, and asks the same two questions. Are you okay? And do you need anything today? It's not fancy. It's not fast. But it works. Slowly, patiently. He met Ray during a food distribution line at the park. Ray didn't say much at first, just took the meal and moved on. But Greg remembered his face. The next day, he stopped by again. This time, he offered a resource sheet. Ray said he'd seen those before. They usually led to dead ends. Greg didn't push, just said, "If you ever want me to come with you, I can." That one line made the difference. Not a system, a person. Because sometimes what veterans like Ray need most isn't a pamphlet or a hotline. It's a witness. Someone who says, "I'll go with you. I'll stay while you wait. I'll help you figure out what these forms are actually asking." Greg ended up sitting with Ray at the intake office for 2 hours the following Tuesday. Helped him fill out the housing paperwork, wrote down follow-up dates, made a few calls to get confirmation numbers. When the clerk asked for verification of homelessness from a shelter, Greg had already called ahead to secure it. Ray was stunned. "That would have taken me weeks," he said quietly. Greg just shrugged. "That's why I'm here." And this is where real change begins. Not at the federal level, but face to face. Across the country, small groups are stepping into the gap. In Phoenix, there's a mobile unit that drives into tent cities and helps veterans apply for housing and benefits on the spot, with laptops, hot meals, and caseworkers on board. In Houston, a collaborative program between the city, HUD, and local nonprofits reduced veteran homelessness by more than 60% in 5 years, using personalized support plans and rapid response housing teams. In Montana, one rural county converted an abandoned school building into a transitional shelter just for veterans. Local businesses donated materials. Volunteers did the work. The result? A warm, safe place for 14 veterans who had nowhere else to go, and a waiting list of 40 more. These efforts aren't massive. They're not flashy, but they're saving lives. Still, it's not enough. For every veteran housed, another waits. For every program that succeeds, 5 more are stuck in red tape. Greg, like many in his field, is burning out. His phone rings constantly. His clients face setbacks daily. Missed appointments, stolen backpacks, illness, eviction. The victories are real, but rare. And yet, he keeps showing up. Why? "I served too," Greg says. "Just not in combat. I figure this is how I serve now." There's something powerful about that sentiment. Service doesn't end when the uniform comes off. For some, it just changes shape. But it shouldn't fall on people like Greg alone. We expect so much from veterans. We ask them to be strong, honorable, resilient. But what if we flip the question? What does it say about us, about this country, if we can't be those things for them? What if strength meant building a system that doesn't require heroics to survive? What if honor meant making sure no one who served ever has to sleep in the rain? What if resilience wasn't something we demanded from the broken, but something we modeled by refusing to accept that this is just how it is? Because here's the truth. It can change. We know what works. We've seen it happen. Cities that lower their numbers, programs that reconnect people to housing, to healthcare, to community, but it takes commitment. Not just funding, but follow-through. Not just slogans, but systems. Not just appreciation, but action. And it takes a public willing to ask harder questions. Because if we only clap for veterans once a year during parades, but ignore the tent behind the gas station the rest of the time, what are we really honoring? Next, we'll zoom out and follow the money. What are we spending? Where is it going? And why hasn't it been enough? The numbers might surprise you, or frustrate you, or both. But we need to look, because if we don't know what's broken, we can't fix it. Let's talk about the money. Because here's the part that frustrates a lot of people, especially veterans like Ray. It's not that the United States doesn't spend money on homelessness or veteran services. It does. In fact, the federal government allocates billions of dollars every year toward housing assistance, support programs, and Veterans Affairs. The Department of Veterans Affairs alone had a budget of over $300 billion in 2024, with more than $3.1 billion specifically targeted toward programs to end veteran homelessness. So why are people still sleeping in tents? Why are men and women who serve this country still trying to figure out how to fill out the same forms 3 different ways just to get a cot for the night? Where does the money go? Some of it does real work. It funds case managers, emergency housing, mental health support, addiction treatment, and job placement services. The HUD-VASH program, a partnership between Housing and Urban Development and the VA, provides housing vouchers and supportive services for veterans. Thousands of people have been placed in permanent housing through these programs. But the system is complicated, fragmented, and most of all, slow. Every program has eligibility requirements, documentation checklists, and waiting periods. One office handles vouchers, another handles mental health, another handles job training. They don't always talk to each other. And in between those offices, real people get lost. Money also gets stuck at the administrative level. A large percentage goes to maintaining operations, covering salaries, data collection, compliance audits. That's not inherently wrong. Systems need staff. But when the bulk of the funding goes toward maintaining bureaucracy instead of helping individuals directly, something's broken. Take Ray's case. He qualifies for multiple programs, but each one requires different paperwork, different verification, different appointments. And he has to manage all of that while sleeping outside, with no printer, no consistent internet access, and no mailbox. It's like asking someone to run a marathon while hopping on one foot, blindfolded. You can hear the frustration in his voice when he talks about it. They tell you help is available, and it is. But getting to it? That's the hard part. He's not wrong. One VA internal audit found that nearly 20% of eligible veterans never complete the enrollment process for housing assistance. Not because they don't qualify, but because they can't navigate the steps. Another report from the Government Accountability Office revealed that over $400 million in housing assistance for veterans went unspent in 2022. Money that was budgeted, approved, and ready to be used. But the systems weren't able to distribute it fast enough. How does that happen? Ask any caseworker, and they'll tell you. Delays in processing, staff shortages, outdated software systems, contracts tied up in legal reviews, missing documentation, and limited capacity at the local level. So while politicians announce new funding with headlines and ribbon cuttings, the people on the ground, people like Ray, like Greg, like Angela and Mike, see little change. Meanwhile, other budgets continue to grow. In 2024, the U.S. spent over $877 billion on national defense. Less than 1% of that amount is what it would take to end veteran homelessness entirely, according to multiple estimates by housing coalitions and policy think tanks. It's not a question of resources. It's a question of will and priorities. Because in the end, what you fund reflects what you value. And if we can find billions to build weapons, why can't we find a few $100 million to make sure the people who use them have a roof over their heads? Why is the line for shelter longer than the line at the recruitment office? Why are we willing to accept that some veterans just fall through the cracks, as if the cracks aren't something we created? These are hard questions, but they deserve answers. And yes, there are examples of progress. Since 2010, veteran homelessness in the U.S. has decreased by over 50%. Some cities, like Houston, New Orleans, and Philadelphia, have been recognized for effectively ending chronic veteran homelessness by using a housing-first model, placing people in stable housing without requiring them to jump through endless hoops first. Those models work, but they require sustained investment, strong local partnerships, and a commitment to case-by-case support. Not just broad programs with catchy names. They require flexibility, humanity, and a willingness to listen to the people being served. Ray doesn't want a handout. He wants a chance, a fair shot at getting back into the system he once served. He's done his part. He's navigated the maze. He's waited in lines. He's tried and tried again. The money exists. The programs exist. The success stories exist. So what's stopping us? In the next section, we'll look at what happens when a veteran finally does get housing, how that moment changes everything, and why it's not the end of the story, but the beginning of something deeper. A place to heal, a place to rebuild, a door that closes behind them, not in front. It was a Tuesday afternoon when Ray got the call. He was sitting outside the library, charging his phone at the only outlet that didn't spark when it rained. The screen lit up, a number he didn't recognize. Normally he wouldn't answer. Too many spam calls, too many promises that led nowhere. But something nudged him. Call it instinct, call it exhaustion, call it hope clinging to the last rung. He picked up. It was his caseworker. After 6 months of back and forths, missed appointments, and refiled documents, a unit had opened up. A small studio apartment in a veterans-only housing complex downtown. Move-in was scheduled for Friday. They'd provide a key, a bus pass, and a welcome kit. Sheets, toiletries, a lamp, and a voucher for groceries. For a moment, Ray said nothing. The line went quiet. "Ray?" the voice asked gently. He swallowed hard. "I'm here," he said. "I'm just trying to believe you." There's no soundtrack for a moment like that. No applause, just the quiet hum of a city that doesn't stop moving, and one man realizing he finally doesn't have to keep running. The next 3 days were a blur. Greg, the outreach worker, met him at the clinic, helped him pick up his paperwork. They stopped by a thrift store for a decent jacket. A volunteer from a local church donated a microwave. Another brought a small rug to make it feel less like a cell and more like a home. The apartment was nothing fancy. Beige walls, a single window, a kitchenette, a twin bed with a mattress wrapped in plastic. But to Ray, it looked like a castle. He opened every drawer, ran his hands across the countertop, turned the sink on and off just to hear it, pressed the light switch over and over, like a kid. Then he sat down in the middle of the floor, shoes off, just breathing. Later that night, he locked the door from the inside and cried for the first time in years. Not because he was sad, but because he was safe. This is what a turning point looks like. Not dramatic, not viral, just quiet, solid, stable. But here's the truth most people don't understand. Getting housed is not the end of the journey. It's the start of a new one. And sometimes, the hardest. Because housing doesn't automatically fix everything. It doesn't erase the trauma. It doesn't restore the years lost to survival. It doesn't repair the family ties that frayed. It doesn't cure addiction, rebuild job history, or silence the voices in your head when you wake up at 3 a.m. and forget where you are. Housing is the foundation, not the solution. And for many veterans, that first week inside is both a relief and a reckoning. Ray struggled those first few days. He couldn't sleep well. The silence felt too loud. He kept waking up in the middle of the night, heart pounding, convinced someone was coming. He sat in the kitchen chair for hours, unsure what to do with stillness. He missed the rhythm of survival, the necessity of movement, the adrenaline. Now, there was just time. It took effort to believe he was allowed to rest. Thankfully, his housing program included on-site counseling. Twice a week, a therapist came by to check in. They didn't talk about combat, not yet. They started with simpler things: what he liked to cook, what music he used to listen to, whether he wanted to grow a plant by the window. He laughed when she asked. But the next week, there was a cactus on his windowsill. Greg visited too, brought coffee, sat on the steps and talked about sports. No lectures, no expectations, just presence. That mattered. Because support doesn't stop when someone gets a key. That's where it's most needed. Studies show that up to 50% of newly housed individuals relapse into homelessness within the first year. Not because they don't want housing, but because they don't receive ongoing support. Furniture helps. Food helps. But it's relationships that make stability stick. Ray joined a weekly group with other housed veterans. They talked about nothing and everything: back pain, old songs, weird neighbors, the VA's confusing paperwork. Slowly, a community formed. Not perfect, not polished, but real. And real is what saves people. He started applying for part-time jobs. Volunteered at the very shelter where he once waited in line. Began helping others fill out the forms he used to hate. Sometimes they asked why he bothered. He just smiled. Because someone helped me. Today, Ray's not a headline. He's not a poster child. He's just one man with a front door, a bus pass, a small cactus by the window, and a reason to wake up tomorrow. Is his life perfect? No, but it's his life again. And that matters more than we'll ever understand. In our final section, we'll ask the question we started with, but from a new angle. What would it take to make this the norm, not the miracle? What would it look like if we kept our promises, not just in speeches, but in systems? And what can you, the listener, do next? So now we ask the question again. With everything we've seen, everything we've heard, what would it actually take to end veteran homelessness in America? Completely, permanently, for good? Not just reduce it, not just manage it, end it. The answer is not as far off as some might think. It doesn't require a miracle. It doesn't even require a massive new invention. It just requires resolve from systems, from cities, and from us. We already know what works. Cities like Houston, Salt Lake City, and Bakersfield have made national headlines for effectively ending chronic veteran homelessness. Not because the problem disappeared, but because they created systems that catch people quickly, respond rapidly, and house them permanently. Their secret wasn't complicated. They focused on 3 things. 1. Housing first. Instead of requiring sobriety, employment, or mental health treatment before offering housing. They provided stable shelter first. Because nothing else sticks if someone's still sleeping on concrete. 2. Integrated systems. Local VA offices, nonprofits, housing authorities, and outreach teams shared data, met weekly, and worked together, not in silos. 3. Individualized support. They didn't treat veterans like numbers. They treated them like people, with case managers, therapy access, job training, and social support that continued after move-in. And the results? Thousands of veterans are now off the streets for good. That means it's not a question of possibility. It's a question of scalability. So why hasn't it happened everywhere? Because it takes work, and coordination, and follow-through. And because veteran homelessness is, in many ways, a mirror of all the things we haven't yet fixed in this country. It reflects the flaws in our housing market, the cracks in our mental health system, the tangle of bureaucracies that speak different languages, and the human tendency to look away when the problem feels too big to solve. But it's not too big. Not when we break it down. Ending veteran homelessness means fully funding the programs that already exist. Cutting red tape so veterans don't get lost in the process. Hiring and supporting more outreach workers like Greg. Expanding mental health care access with low barrier entry points. Building more affordable housing with urgency, not excuses. Supporting landlords willing to house voucher holders. Listening to veterans themselves when designing the systems meant to help them. And maybe most importantly, changing the way we think about who deserves help. Because Ray never stopped deserving dignity. Not when he was walking patrols, not when he was sleeping behind the church, not when he sat outside the library waiting for his name to be called. The promise made to him, and to every veteran, was never supposed to come with conditions. It was simple. You served. We'll take care of you. That's the promise we forgot, but we can still keep it. So now let's come back to you, the listener, the viewer, the person who stayed with this story all the way through. You may be asking, what can I do? You can share this story. You can ask questions in your own city. You can donate, yes. But more importantly, you can show up. Show up in conversation, in awareness, in compassion. You can stop looking away when you see someone like Ray. You can ask your elected officials, what are we doing for our homeless veterans? Really doing? You can volunteer, advocate, vote, speak up. And if you've never thought much about this before, but now you feel something, that's enough to start. Because stories change minds. Minds change policies. And policies, when rooted in truth and empathy, change lives. Ray's life changed because someone saw him, because someone walked with him, because someone said, you don't have to do this alone. Let that be the legacy we choose. Not one of broken promises, but one of redemption, of resolve, of remembering. Because in the end, the question isn't whether we can end veteran homelessness. The question is whether we'll decide to care enough to try. And if we do, really do, then maybe the next time someone stands outside a shelter at dawn, they'll already have a key in their pocket.